Okay, welcome to the program agenda. Thank you for joining us again today, this Friday, the 3rd of June, 2022. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, greeting you and wishing you a pleasant day and a pleasant weekend all the way from Capitolio, Pasig. I'm saying I am in Capitolio, Pasig because so many of our friends still think I'm in Batangas and living in Lipa, Batangas. Actually, we've been in Metro Manila. We've been in Pasig for the last 5 months, ever since January, and that is a leading of the Lord. And of course, we will still, maybe next week, you might see us broadcasting from Lipa. Anyway, let's start the day with our daily starter, and it is, okay, spending time with your children is more important than spending money on your children. Please let me emphasize this because it's a weekend and a lot of you might want to go out and you will be buying stuff, but please, it's not about the stuff. It's about the connection, the relationship, because I was just speaking with a friend the other day. I was actually giving him counsel, giving him advice, and he was telling me, Kuya, ginagawa ko lahat. I buy them everything. I said, yeah, and where were you, Your Royal Highness? And it struck him. He realized na, yeah, I was replacing my presents with packages. Okay, so yun po, no? Spending time with your children is more important than spending money on your children. Gastusan naman ninyo, no? Pero huwag niyong pinapagpalit yung pagmamahal at presensya sa packaging. Okay, now for today, we will have two gentlemen guesting on the program. One will be speaking to us regarding the reported diversion lang of 3.6 billion dollars, $3.6 billion to the region, meaning to Thailand, etc., Indonesia, Singapore, instead of being invested in the Philippines because of certain regulations and laws. We will be speaking to Dan Lachica, President of the SEIPI, or mamaya po pag-uusapan natin yan, Semiconductors and Electronic Industries in the Philippines. After Dan Lachica, we will be speaking to Toby Tamayo, an agriculture and environmental consultant who will be speaking to us about regenerative farming, permaculture, about all things related, because as far as agenda is concerned, as far as I'm concerned, we are going to be facing a food shortage very soon, or at least very expensive prices, and we got to put our fingers on that button. Okay, let's now go to the Philippine Star quickly for a review of the news on its front page, June 3, 2022. And the front page headline is bread, soap, canned meat makers seek price hikes. Ayan na po ang sinabi ko. Tataas at tataas ang presyo ng bilihin, and yan na po ang nangyayari. And then on top of the front page, Farmally executives Ong and Dargani released from Pasay Jail after spending approximately 7 months at the Pasay City Jail. The dynamic duo of Farmally were released yesterday on recognizance, and ang sagot ng abogado nila, they are planning to file charges against re-elected Senator Risa Ontiveros for ewan ko ba, parang paying or bribing witnesses. Okay. Palace respects CA's Commission on Appointments Authority over President Duterte's nominees, the 3 nominees or appointees to the COMELEC, to the Civil Service Commission, etc. Meanwhile, Captain Jack Sparrow has won his war against his most feared enemy, Amber Heard. Nanalo po si Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp was awarded a $15 million, I don't know what you call it, $15 million for in his defamation case against his wife. Meanwhile, his wife won a $2 million defamation suit against the husband. Ewan ko na. Anyway, ito po, another bad news. Aside from manufacturers and producers seeking higher price, PhilHealth, the national insurance company or agency, medical health agency, medical agent, higher health premiums this month. Tataasan daw ang singil ng contribution to employers and employees. Okay. So, then lifting of health emergency push. Joey Concepcion, Presidential Advisor on Entrepreneurship, is still consistently pushing na maalis na yung mga health emergency or mga level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Meanwhile, that center photo is a photo of the National Museum in the city of Manila, where presumptive President Bongbong Marcos is scheduled to take his oath of office instead of the Luneta Grandstand. Okay yun, for a change. Let's have something different. The photo is the facade of the National Museum being prepared for the event. And the lower photo is a photo of President Manuel Luis Quezon, who took his oath in the very same venue. And then DNR to rescue trees damaged by campaign materials. Okay, Razon firm ice control of Malampaya gas field. And finally, a group photo of different consuls representing different Filipinos who are representing different countries in the luncheon or patanghalian fested by the Turkish embassy to celebrate Turkish cuisine. Okay, iyan na po ang ating mga balita. Let's now go to the meat of the stories or our agenda for today. First up, we have the president of the semiconductor electronics industries in the Philippines. He has over 30 years of senior management experience in the semiconductors field and consumer goods. Was SVP for First Philippine Holdings and was Philippine Expat Managing Director of iOmega Corporation in Utah, etc., etc. Let's bring in Dan Lachica. Good morning, Dan. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Cito. Good morning to you and your viewers.
Okay, I was a bit startled when I saw this news item yesterday quoting you as saying that there was $3.6 billion that should have been invested in the Philippines as foreign direct investment, but landed in the region, namely in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, etc., because of the CREATE law. And you were also quoted as saying that the CREATE law has essentially neutralized the PEZA or the Philippine Export Zone Authority. What's going on, Dan?
Well, okay, maybe just to put it in context, let me just maybe step you through the performance of the industry. Last year, we registered $45.9 billion of exports, which is actually higher than the pre-pandemic value. So we're, hopefully out of the woods and we don't retrogress. Year to date in March, we have 11.79 billion, which is still 61% of the country's commodity exports. What you read was during the PEZA forum with DNR and Senator Amy. And basically, I was expressing my concern as we talked to our members. There's about $3.255 billion of investments that could have been invested in the Philippines, but have gone actually to our neighboring countries, specifically, you know, Thailand and Vietnam for 4 multinationals. And then the balance of the 3.6 you mentioned are potentially going to be moved. Decisions have been made yet to countries like Malaysia and Thailand. Now, the thing is, as I explained, there are several reasons, but one of the big ones is the incentives rationalization. Don't get me wrong, please. CREATE was good. The reduction of corporate income tax was long overdue and highly needed. The concerns that we have would be surrounding the rationalization of incentives. Even with the 10-year transition period, this just kind of doused the appetite of foreign direct investment. Especially, they were thinking that there was a sovereign law that guaranteed this according to the contracts they initially signed. And folded into that really would be, the FIRB basically removing the approval authority of PEZA and thereby increasing another layer of bureaucracy. I mean, the multinationals are basically saying, why fix something that isn't broken? I mean, PEZA is very accountable under the leadership of Director Plaza in terms of remitting funds to the government and making locators accountable. So I can't speak for the other IPAs, but at least as our experience with PEZA has been very positive. Now, in addition to that, there are other reasons. And I'll name a few of them. The high operating costs, as we all know, the high power cost, 40% higher than Vietnam, for instance. The logistics cost, even the labor cost, if you consider all the holidays. And this essentially was why we were requesting government to basically reconsider the incentives rationalization, because that would help offset these concerns. Because at the end of the day, the CEOs in their headquarters will look at the site or the country with the lowest operating cost. And so we're at a disadvantage there. Other reasons, the inconsistencies of government agency rulings. For example, this VAT on constructive exports and the unannounced field audits of BIR, which thank God have been suspended. We're also talking about, the effluent standards of DNR, the E-Track ruling. The electronics, E-Track is about electronic tracking of shipments. And I think it's appropriate in some areas, but for the electronics industry, in our 30 plus years of experience, we haven't had any experience of technical smuggling because we're primarily for exports. The examples were given were for, with all due respect, garments and cigarettes and all that, but not for the electronics industry. So this would be, one company is incurring about 20 million pesos a month for this E-Track cost, which we think are, not necessary and redundant. So anyway, this inconsistencies, the perceived corruption. We know that most countries have a level of corruption as well, but I think, the corruption that we're talking about hurts the industries. And thank God for ARTA. They've been playing a good role in terms of mitigating some of these concerns. And also DTI and DOS, they are partner agencies. The gap between the skills produced in our college graduates versus what the industry needs, that's also considered. So there's a slew of reasons. And one of the things that we hope to do in terms of recommendation for the incoming government, because certainly the industry supports the new administration and would like to work with them. And hopefully we can get a dialogue scheduled with the president, the cabinet, the Senate, and the House of Representatives I understand Senator Miggs is now the new Senate President. Congratulations to him. But this dialogue essentially would entail or will result in clarifying our concerns and hopefully prevent more capital flight and attract investments, which we hope will happen. We'd like to discuss how we can harmonize policies, how we can possibly review, create, and specifically the incentives rationalization, as I mentioned, how to harmonize government policies, eliminating corruption perhaps, and promote the ease of doing business, automating government, simplifying and automating government policies, and of course, improving the education with the help of Vice President-elect Sara Duterte, to basically improve the skills that's generated by the university's graduates, not so much as for passing PRC board exams, but for really having the demonstrated skills that the industry needs. So those are just some of our concerns and recommendations.
Well, thank you for laying it all down, because clearly we have a barangay full of problems. If we want to attract investors, we have an entire barangay full of problems. But here's the question, Dan. Whose job is this? Because I would tend to think that you, being associated with the private sector, would primarily go, hey, this is the ideal, this is what would be nice, but at the end of the day, not my problem, not my concern. I'm going to go run my company or deal with my clients. So then who's responsible for this?
That's a good question, Cito. By the way, before I answer that, just wanted to add that this articles that you published, basically, I've been receiving some negative comments saying, give it up and just work with the administration. That's what we're actually trying to do. I mean, if the government doesn't know what the concerns of these multinationals are, you're just going to see not only capital flight, but also no more investments. I mean, on one hand, we pride ourselves in comparing 2021 FDIs compared to 2020. And that's well and good. It's 50% higher or thereabouts. But what we need to compare ourselves with is the absolute investments in the Philippines compared to the rest of ASEAN, like Vietnam, which is like 2 times our investments, like Thailand, 1.5 times. And that's what our role is at SEIPI and for the industry, right? On one hand, the multinationals will decide what's good for their companies. Our role really, and we've always been working with government, and it's really a partnership. We can't just cry wolf and just blame everything. We have to do our part in articulating our concerns to the government and work with them to alleviate these concerns, mitigate these concerns, so that the end effect really, it's for the good of the country. It's for the good of the economy to attract the investments and generate employment. It's going to be good for the country. So we need to work with government, and hopefully, we're able to schedule this dialogues that we're hoping to do.
Yeah, but Dan, I'm going to be very brutal about this, and
Sure.
not at you, but I remember I was in a event several years back. This was quite some time back. And everybody was belly aching about corruption. Everybody was complaining about the BIR this, the customs that, the DILG this, etc. And then I looked around the room and I casually said, I don't get this. You are all leaders of industries. You are all presidents of your companies. Why can't you pursue this matter with government? Why can't you really push for the obliteration of corruption, et cetera, et cetera? And, I had to ask this question 3 times during the conversation because no one seemed to want to answer the question until finally, I think a foreigner got irritated, or I think he was a foreigner. He got irritated with my nagging, and he said, "What makes you think they want to?" They know the rules of the game. They know how to play the game here in the Philippines. They don't want foreign investments. They don't want competition, because the minute you get rid of corruption, the minute you make everything fluid and efficient, then these local boys can't compete with the multinationals. So, I mean, is that the reality we're dealing with?
Well, honestly, Cito, you won't hear the multinationals and certainly the expats be candid about what they're experiencing. Why is that? Because there are consequences. They will be picked on, they will be singled out, so they don't want to do that. So it's up to us, like the industry associations, to just get the information, anonymize it, and speak with the government, the agencies who will listen. Well, I'll give an example. There's one agency that charges unauthorized overtime, unreceipted overtime, right? On one hand, it's not a big amount, but you can brush it off. But then again, this is an industry-wide concern. So we talked to the agency to the point that with their help and with ARTA's help, we were able to actually get hearings. And one officer was given show cause and actually replaced. The question is it just one officer? No, not at all. The subsequent hearings haven't been scheduled. There are more, and we're not giving up on it. We're pursuing it, but that's just an example. There's some silo or systematic resistance, like you said, but it doesn't mean that we should stop. That's our role. Now, to your point, as far as does government want the investments, I think we do, because it's good for the economy. But let me quote one incident that we were in a meeting, and then this multinational expat was appealing that these are conditions, and Singapore is trying to attract their new plant. All right, and you know what the cabinet member said? Go to Singapore. Well, what kind of message does that give, right? So you're right to a certain extent. But like I said, we believe that we need to work with government continuously, and hopefully they will listen. Hopefully they will do things that are for the good of the country, the citizens, and the economy.
Okay, it's clear that you guys, particular you mean well. You're calling attention to missed opportunities, and the idiots who are reacting to you negatively. Well, it's not their money; it's just their mouth, but not their money that's on the table or invested in the country. Now, the question is, what do we need to prioritize? Because in the article that I read, it was mentioned that the Fiscal Incentives Review Board has essentially neutralized or made the PESA immaterial. Is that your contention, or should the Fiscal Incentive Review Board be removed as a duplication?
Well, I'm not gonna say it should be removed. Obviously, it serves a function. All I'm appealing to is the reconsideration of the authority of PESA, because PESA has always been succeeded among the Japanese, Americans, EU as a one-stop shop. Now, if you add another layer of approval, then what happens? They're just a marketing firm, right? They're just a marketing agency without that approval. It has worked, and I think one of the senators essentially said, let's not fix something that ain't broke. Okay, if anything else, let's put measures for accountability, but don't add another layer of bureaucracy. But
what benefits do you actually get from the Fiscal Incentive Review Board that you don't get from PESA?
Well, in the new law, FIRB approves all the investments. So even if PESA goes out and negotiates or attracts investments, they don't have the final say, unlike before. I mean, FIRB does that. And again, if we don't trust PESA, and I think they're trustworthy, DG Plus is trustworthy, then let's put somebody they think will be good. Although, like I said, we think the DG Plaza is doing a great job. Let's be fact-driven. Let's be data-driven. Why are we going to do changes if they're not required? If we haven't any proven that they're required. So let's restore it. And again, bureaucracy, especially when other countries are bending over backwards to expedite investments, right? To attract investments. Let's not put ourselves behind the eight ball. I mean, but again, let me just clear, this is not the only cause. It's like a multi-headed hydra. There are other issues that we need to talk about. And that's what I'm hoping to articulate when we get audience with the president and the cabinet.
But is there no existing system? Well, everyone presumes that that's the job of the PESA, that all you have to do is give your concerns to the PESA, and they're the ones who should be dealing with the DTI, with the DOF, and the Office of the President.
That's how it has been, and that's how it's worked. And again, that's why we're scratching our heads, especially those who had very positive experiences in PESA, why it has been changed. And again, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know everything that's working in government, but I'm just looking at what the history is, the trend is, the performance is. And there are actually metrics that are being upon which PESA is based on, performance is based on. So let's look at that and adjust the controls, if you will, but not to the extent of adding another layer of bureaucracy, which investors don't appreciate, especially if they concern vis-a-vis what other countries are doing.
Is it, do the investors resent the FIRB because of an added financial cost, or a longer bureaucratic delay, or what is the problem that the investors have with the FIRB?
Well, they don't resent the FIRB. In fact, most of them probably don't understand the function of the FIRB, right? What they are concerned about, again, is that if you're a multinational CEO, you want to invest hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in a new product, in a new technology, you're acting like you're pretty much going to be like a bean counter. Which location will enable me to produce the lowest cost? Okay, of course, without sacrificing other ethical values or discrimination, but just looking at the overall cost, which includes, whether we like it or not, the incentives. They go down to the bottom line equation, right? So they look at that, and if the Philippines is not competitive, like I said, we're not comparing the Philippines with ourselves. We're comparing ourselves with ASEAN countries who are craving and will do whatever it takes to get the FDIs. So
yeah, because at the end of the day, this is not about just getting money to the Philippines or investors, but the jobs that these investments and these companies will create locally and the money it brings into the economy. And I think that is the key point that many people miss. They keep talking about FDIs, economic terms, etc. But what will $3.6 billion create in terms of jobs? I think you were quoted as saying as 25,000 jobs.
That's a conservative estimate, Cito. And then one of the things that I hear is that, if we increase taxes, if we reduce these incentives, we're going to create, so much billions in revenue, right? Well, you're assuming that your tax base will remain constant, but eventually, when these companies move, 100% of zero is zero, right? And so the thing with our industry also is that our industry life depends on new products, new technologies. And as I've mentioned in the Senate hearings and the Congress hearings, if if you limit or minimize the attractiveness of investments, guess what? This multinationals will put their new products into different companies. And if we're stuck with running legacy products that will be obsolete over time, right? What do you think is going to happen with the electronics industry? This $50 billion or $45.9 billion of exports. I'm not saying everything will disappear, but it's not going to be the same. This 400,000 direct workers and 2.6 indirect workers substantially reduced.
Well, I think we have to put that in front of our viewers right now, because I'm reminded before I could buy locally made tires, Goodyear tires that were locally made in the Philippines. You could actually buy vehicles that were made in the Philippines under Japanese brands and even American brands. And now, forget it. All of those were just part of the history gone by. And I guess that's the problem if we cannot sustain. Now, you've talked about investments, you've talked about incentives, removing bureaucracy. My last question is, what is the immediate problem that needs to be addressed, whether we're talking potential investors or current companies that you are part of? Is it power? Is it labor? Is it salaries, etc.? What should be the first priority of what's on the table?
This might be a nebulous answer, Cito, but I think the first order of business is helping the government, helping the president understand the electronics industry. Because once they do, then everything else falls into place. Seeing how we can reduce operating costs, seeing what we can do to enhance the incentives package, which will balance, the high operating costs. I think the first approach we want to take is, and this is a, perpetuous time to educate the government because honestly, to be honest with you, with the former president, I don't think, DTI and DOST understand, but I don't think the president himself understood the electronics industry. So that's
but does a president have to understand the nature of the business? I mean, can't you just have a liaison officer between the office of the president and the industry?
We never were able to, we never achieved that, okay? And when you say the president listens to his cabinet, right, or his if you have a cabinet member that disagrees with the position of the electronics industry, then and the president just listens primarily to him, then we have a problem. We have a problem.
Okay, were you referring to President Duterte or President Noynoy Aquino?
No, the President Duterte.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, presidents can't know everything. And I guess at the end of the day, you're going to have to push hard, just like Joey Concepcion does. He's just so persistent and stubborn, and he will really ram his way through. And unfortunately, it will rub some people wrong. But if we are going to make sure our economy improves under the Marcos administration, then we're all going to have to work our butts off. Thank you very much, Dan. Have a good day.
God bless you. God bless our viewers.
Okay, that, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Dan Lachica, President, Semiconductor and Electronics Industries in the Philippines Incorporated. Just as a clarification, okay? They're not protesting, okay? They are expressing concern. They are in the thick of the businesses, etc. And syempre, they hear about this company, that company, or this group of potential investors saying, well, we'll just bring our money elsewhere because the situation in the Philippines is not ideal. It has nothing to do with politicians. It has everything to do with systems. The bureaucracy, the incentives, rules, etc., the policies on employment, etc., etc. And why is this a matter of concern for all of us? Because jobs that could come to the Philippines or jobs that can be created in the Philippines are not going to happen. Sabi ni Dan, conservatively, the money that won't come to the Philippines in investment means there won't be at least a minimum of 25,000 jobs. Okay? So, yan na po yan. Let's not criticize people for speaking out. Because in this country, pag may nagsabing we're going to put up this corporation, we're going to put up this business, or we're doing, etc., etc., the competition always labels them mayabang, mahangin, maangas. And at the end of the day, you know, people don't talk about the vision, the dream, and Filipinos are no longer hopeful. We need to be hopeful about the future, regardless of who the president is, regardless of our personal sentiments. Okay, sabi nga ng your opinion does not matter under the will of God. Okay, let's go for a quick break. We will return with our next guest. Makinig po kayo because I'm sure you're going to hear and learn a lot from our next guest as well. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, welcome back to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and we are trying to connect to our next guest, Mr. Toby Tamayo. He is an agriculture and environmental consultant, and he studied permaculture design course in the Institute in New South Wales, Australia, served as consultant and project manager in countryside development from 1987 to 1993. And he is a founding member of the Organic Producers Traders Association, BNet, Beekeepers Network, and Apiculture Training and Development Center. Now, you may be wondering, why is Cito featuring so much of these guys who are into planting, farming, or who are involved in agriculture? Well, it is not something that's all lined up. They all fall into place. But in recent days, it has become very clear. And please, binabalaan ko na po kayo, all of you who have land, who have a place to plant on, it may be a good idea to start planting in your backyard or get into this backyard farming lang. No? Don't do it like my friends who have essentially bought 6 hectares. Oh, I'm retiring. I'm going into farming. Sabi ko, pare, mali. You should have gotten into farming before you retired, because after 65, when you try farming, you will regret it because hindi po nakahanda ang katawan nyo. Anyway, let's try to bring in Toby Tamayo because we need to know about these things such as permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and transformative agriculture, etc. Mr. Toby Tamayo, good morning, sir. Are you there?
Cito, good morning. Yeah, I can hear you clear. Good morning.
Okay, thank you for joining us. And unfortunately, it seems to me that your internet service has crashed or is suffering right now. Welcome to the Philippines. But be that as it may I ask you, what is the extent of your involvement in agriculture at the moment?
Okay, I've been very much involved in the province of La Union as far as the agri-tourism side. Now, the tourism is an easy thing to do because maganda ang mga dagat ng La Union eh.
Mm.
But
okay, I think maganda yung dagat ng La Union, pero ang sama ng kanilang signal, internet signal. Just let me know when you're there, Toby, because I think what Toby Tamayo was going to get into was okay yung tourism, madali yung tourism. I know that for a fact. You know why, ladies and gentlemen? Because I built this resort in Palawan called Discovery Paradise. That was originally called Club Paradise. I'm the crazy builder. Okay, builder lang po, hindi po ako owner. Okay, and then I built a small bed and breakfast, which I eventually also let go. But when I was running the operations back then, madali pong gumawa. It's so easy to make nice cottages, nice facilities, keep the beach clean, and keep tourists happy. But it was a nightmare to keep the food coming. Because like, for instance, when people go to the beach, they expect na when they arrive, they will see lobsters, crabs, fish, etc. And on a full moon, go try and catch fish. Kasi on a full moon, pagkabilugan po ng buwan, hindi bulag ang isda at nawawala yung pagkatanga nila. So they don't bite the bait, they go for better prey. So wala kang fish, wala kang mabigay na pagkain sa tourist, and that's when you discover kailangan pala nating may backup farm sa ating resort. Okay, I think Toby is back. Toby, welcome back.
yeah, sorry about the signal because I'm in the middle of a forest. Now I'm supposed to have a good connection, but unfortunately this morning it wasn't so good.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you were
with
talking about tourism in La Union and farming.
Yeah, in the last 6 years, we worked on both. But the tourism picked up, no? So La Union is a place where people are going now. We have more tourists than you can imagine after the COVID. But with the agriculture, this is something that we need to spend more time. 20% of the province are farmers. The population of the province are farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we have been monocropping for all these years and have embraced, as early as 60 years ago when the Green Revolution movement started in the country. That means we shifted to a more fossil-based, fossil fuel-dependent agriculture, meaning our fertilizers, are all, chemicals now, and it's been for 60 years that we've been doing this. So one of the issues we're confronted with is soil. Any agriculturist or any farmer would know this, should be paying attention to the quality or the fertility of our soil to make it more productive. And this is one that is hampering our rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
Ang tagal na masyado kasi chemical is used, and the dependency to it has been like every farmer would need to spend so much just for the use of chemical fertilizer. And then we also lost the ability of the farmers to produce their own seed. So when you talk about transformative agriculture, which has been discussed recently in Davos, finally they're recognizing that the farmers are part of the food chain. Finally, there's being to recognize the importance of the farmer and its role to make sure to provide food security for the future and for the moment. So another thing that we have lost touch with is, when you talk about permaculture or sustainable agriculture, we should not forget that what practices do we have in our production of food that connects to a sustainable system. Nung araw, marami tayong gubat that sustains our water, a microclimate, fertile soil. Nung araw, in the practices, we maintain community forests. The farmers did that, as far as indigenous people are concerned, and many people who live nearby the upland. And when they do this, it is a means to make things stable environmentally. And as the forest is a sustainable system, we connected to this. Our agriculture is connected to this. Our water source, our microclimate, again, fertility of soil. Then you have the wildlife that balances things out. Kung may problema ka sa insekto, sa peste, basta may wildlife dyan, it balances things.
Yeah, I remember that, Toby, because when I put up Discovery Paradise, one of the things I did was I introduced chickens, native chickens to the island, because first we needed a reliable food source, and also because of the insects, etc. But then the German investor had a girlfriend who was complaining about the chickens crowing in the morning. So we were told to remove all of the roosters and the chickens. And then they started complaining about the insects on the island.
Yeah,
Toby.
Yeah, I live in, this place where I live. You mentioned about, going into farming. Don't get into farming when you're 65. It's a difficult thing to do because we're not strong enough to handle it. Now, I've been doing a lot of this type of work. I started again. I went down to La Union from Baguio City after 30 years where I did these. I said, I thought it was too late, It was like 12 years ago for me to come into agriculture. But you know what? I grew a forest in 12 years. 70% of the land of 9 hectares is now covered.
Toby, just for context, okay, I was referring to city slickers. People who've never worked the land, people who've always sat on a chair in the office and suddenly want to become farmers and they think it's easy. It's not easy, and I think you agree on that point.
Yes, definitely. It's a difficult thing. But yet at the same time, I've been encouraging people. I have friends right now with big turning, okay, I think La Union, is there land available there? Sure.
No.
It's still time, and the conditions are still basically doable. It's not as difficult yet, but alam nyo, may climate change tayo eh. So, La Union is a very dry province, you know? So these are issues you have to be confronted with and you have to be dealing with and to consider what you have to do.
Toby, if you don't mind, and just so that we can make the most of the time because we're really down to a few minutes because of this technical problem, could you just explain to us permaculture, regenerative agriculture, and transformative agriculture? What are the basics or fundamentals of these ideas?
Permaculture is about the old practices of indigenous people mixed with new science, you know? Now, when you go to a land, let's say you need to work and find out how nature has designed this particular property or this land or this province. Kumbaga, if you're in Region 1, you have a type 2 climate, so that means rainfall mo, ganito lang kahaba, ganito kahaba ang init. So as soon as you get into permaculture, it considers every component from where the sun rises, where the sun sets, where the wind blows, where the typhoon winds comes in. So as soon as you do your approach to things, you start to consider working with what nature has provided your location. And in doing so, you can see you begin to work on trying to make it more permanent. You locate your houses in the different places where the sun doesn't shine during the afternoon. So may mga ganyan na components yan eh. And then you design, let's say, like here in the farm where I am right now, the sun rises in the east, di ba? So and it sets on the west. So mainit ang probinsya namin kasi we're facing the west the afternoon sun. So napakainit niyan. Eh kung ang farm mo nakaharap sa ganun, di gagastos ka sa maraming bagay. From water to, trying to microclimate your farm. Ngayon, this is a part of it. It's about designing, not just going into a place, doing what you want to do without consideration of what nature has in store for your particular farm or location. Now, when you talk about regenerative agriculture, it's all about how to regenerate the soil fertility of your land. That's one of the main components of it. How do I make my soil fertile again so it becomes more productive? And how can I rehabilitate it, a soil that has been abused? So you bring back nature again. Because the soil biota that we have on our ground, buhay to eh. If you expose them to chemicals or herbicides, they kill the soil biota that creates the fertility of the soil that interacts with certain plants. Kasi tayo, gusto natin, pag nag-agriculture, patay lahat ng weeds eh. But hindi natin consider marami palang mga halaman that are beneficial, that can actually help regenerate the fertility of your soil. May mga ganun na components to eh. Then the transformative agriculture is an approach that is being pushed, where if you're going to go into agriculture or you are working with farming communities, you make sure it's inclusive. You consider who are involved here. Nung araw, when you talk about farming, pamilya yan eh. Then you have community. Then you have the town who are involved. So you work with one another to improve things that you need. And somebody will be producing seeds. Somebody can be producing fertilizer. We are sharing the common resource like water and water and the resources that you need to grow successful cropping. And then you go biodiversity. Food diversity is the key too on this one.
Hindi yung monocropping na puro nyug lang or puro mangga lang, etc., etc.
Yeah, you need to polycrop it. Yung marami talaga. You need to polycrop now. It's the time to do that. Natutok tayo sa isang staple lang eh. Kung rice lang. Kung mais lang. Now, but what we need to do is to diversify. I mean, there are other countries, ang staple nila. Now, dito sa bansa natin, meron ngayon na we're discovering this, yung adlay, which is a native crop, which is very expensive and very healthy. But it grows in our bulldogs in Mindanao, in many places, but we didn't consider developing it, but finally we're doing it now. They're two
I've
staples.
been eating that adlay, but I don't even know how it comes up. Is it a grass? Is it a shrub? Is it what is adlay?
It's a grass. It's a tall grass. It's like
Okay.
a cross between rice and maize.
Okay.
Taga-ilog pa. It grows by the riverbank. But man, we can produce it. Like this is something I'm testing here for the province because it helps the farmers. And you can plant it anywhere. You can plant it even after the rice crop. It will grow. And then sabi nila, ay, baka mainit ang La Union, hindi mabubuhay yan. No. We've proven it wrong. In the last 3 years, we've done all of our testing. Nakikita natin, may dalawa ng staple. Yung una rice, ay may palay dito. Umulan na eh. Then, after that, after harvest, you plant adlay.
Ayun. Okay. Well, Toby, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we'll do a part 2, and maybe in the part 2, it'll just be you and me for the whole show, and we can talk about all of this because there have been so many plantitos and plantitas that came up during the pandemic, but most of them are not aware of these concepts that you are talking about, and especially with the high price of fertilizer, people need to know about all of these regenerative farming concepts. But for now, thank you very much for your time, Toby.
Yeah, expect. Thank you also for. Anyway, we'll make sure that things better next time. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you. That's Mr. Toby Tamayo out there in La Union, and I am Cito Beltran here in Pasig. And let us now read through our reminder for the week, our blessing for the week. Consider it a blessing. When some things go wrong, take a moment to be thankful for the many things that are going right. And thank you for joining us this entire week. Thank you to our guests who shared their knowledge, their views, and thank you for keeping it here on Agenda. And please keep it here on One News PH.